Good afternoon. Joe Rickard, Region Agronomist with Winfield United, joined by Dan Griffin, Technical Seed Agronomist with Winfield United, and Greg Culp, Sales Manager Extraordinaire at Mercer Landmark.
Thank you.
We're out here at the Rockford Answer Plot, and Greg's got some questions for us today. What's going on in your mind, Greg?
Well, just a few questions. I know we've covered a lot of things as we were out here, but just some conversation in the marketplace. One being the use of MasterLock with fungicides, and why do we use that versus other adjuvants? And why does it make a difference on the farm?
Yeah, so when we look at MasterLock, and we're specifically, one of the target areas that we use MasterLock is our fungicide application. That's got a different surfactant system than what our Interlock product does, that drop-tight technology that we kind of cue that as. And it's also NPE free, or non-phenol ethoxylate free, which at the end of the day, why is that good for a grower? Or why do your sellers, should be promoting that on the farm? When we think about fungicide timing, when can we get that plane in here? When is that chopper going to be coming in here? It may be right at tassel time or right between that R2 time frame. If we have it before that tassel, we can add that MasterLock or keep it in there, and we're not going to contribute to any arrested ear syndrome. So if we remember back around 2010 time frame, working out in Illinois around that time, we saw some fungicide applications with non-ionic surfactants that contained NPE that went on before tassel, and that's what's contributing to the arrested ear syndrome.
Is there a yield advantage with the additional penetration you get?
So when we look at our MasterLock and the studies that we've shown, around 4.8 bushel is what we're gaining yield advantage when we add MasterLock into the tank.
Good. Another question that's not related to corn, but one that I think is an issue, is the resistant weeds, especially waterhemp. And we've got guys that I guess still hope that Roundup works. So what do you recommend for a grower who says, I'm just going to try Roundup one more time?
Yeah, here's one of those guys that look like, right? Those maybe taller than what average is, or over that 6-inch tall, right, Dan, that we're looking at here.
Yeah,
a lot of stuff
we're close to
with waterhemp. And this is when we think about the biology or how weeds think. At the end of the day, this is a completely different animal than what we've battled in the past with the mare's tail piece, or the horseweed piece, as some guys like to call it, right? So when we take a look at that mare's tail, that's a winter annual. So that's going to germinate in the fall and then bolt in the spring. This guy is a different animal and a lot more prolific. He is now going to be he's a summer annual, and he's going to germinate in the spring, and he's going to bolt later in the summer. So we've got to think about different modes of action and how we go about with different products. So when we look at, you hear these terms throughout the countryside, layered residual products like S-metolachlor or our Charger brands that dual, other products like Outlook or Zidua, just to name a few. Those are some that we're going to have to add early post to get these guys before we have multiple flushes come in.
So layered. So I put a residual down in the spring, and that's a lot of that. If you look back, a lot of guys think, well, that'll work. It doesn't work with this weed. You want to have a residual early and then come back with a layered residual, because these things keep coming.
You're exactly right. So we'll have our Sonic, Authority, Valor products as our pre-residual products out there first to help contain some of these early emergers that we have coming out, and then we'll layer that residual as we come in with our post-pass of with those Charger brands or Zidua or other layered residual products. Right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly right, Joe. As you know, Greg, with waterhemp, that thing will germinate spring, summer. We have different flushes of it, so just one residual doesn't do the job. These plants are also dioecious, meaning they're male and female plants. They can cross with each other. They can cross with Palmer. To me, Palmer gets a lot of the notoriety for being a very bad weed. We should be giving just as much attention to waterhemp, because as we continue to blow through different herbicides, have more and more resistance out there, controlling weeds like waterhemp, that'll be a huge component of moving agriculture forward over the next 5, 10, 20 years. So doing a good job with that now, that'll be key to our success going forward.
That's a great point, and to bring light to some of your sellers that are working with growers that have some of these polluted fields that have this on their farm. Really, you mentioned the Palmer amaranth, right, Dan? The only way, since these now have male and female parts, the only way that we can tell this apart from being a Palmer amaranth is we have to peel one of these leaves off at the petiole, and we fold this petiole right on top of the leaf, And now if we see that this petiole is shorter than the leaf, that's part of the stem here on this little flickered part, but if we see that that's shorter than the leaf, we know we've got a water hemp. No hair and a shorter, we know we've got water hemp. If this petiole was longer, we know we've got some water hemp. So good question.
Speaking of multiple modes of action, another thing as we think about corn that I feel like we've seen a little bit more of this year, and that's rootworm. It's something that for years we worried about it. We used soil applied insecticides, we started using traits, and then we felt like the rootworm problem sort of went away, but I guess it hasn't. So maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's a great observation, and we've seen this across western Ohio. So with corn rootworm, a lot of folks in the past have used traits, BT proteins, to control that pest. So typically we don't have a lot of rootworm pressure in Ohio, but what made this year different was a dry June. When you have a dry June, there's not as much fatality of those larvae in the ground. Those larvae become beetles that, and of course your larvae are feeding on the roots, they become beetles that we're seeing now. So dry Junes lead to more rootworm problems. Ohio soils being more poorly drained are not super conducive to rootworm, but again, when we see dry Junes, we can definitely see them. So in the case of traits, Greg, typically we always recommend, SmartSex has 2 BT proteins below ground. We're starting to see resistance to rootworm to just 1 protein, so that would be like a triple pro product. Where we've seen problems this year have been in triple pro hybrids. The EPA has since outlawed triple pros. Everything is moving to smart stacks in the case of the majority of the corn that Mercer Landmark sells, and that's the trait platform we want to push on continuous corn acre, where we have more disease pressure and also more propensity to give rootworm feeding just because of their increased presence.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate you both answering the questions today, and if you guys have any more questions, just let us know.
Thanks.